guys bring paper with you?
Huh?
Did you bring paper?
I have digital paper on my iPad.
How about regular paper? Here.
Hey, I have this board.
Why don't you share a piece of paper with Daisy down there?
Okay.
Okay. Now remember when we had our first meeting, we talked about why do you want to get the weather? Days like today are why you definitely want to get the weather before you take off, because who knows what it's like. So does anybody remember what I said about before you leave, what do you look at before you even get to the airport? Yes.
Or the clouds?
Well, online, where would you go to look at more than like, yeah, is it cloudy or not?
The weather app?
Yeah, and what kind of weather would you be looking at?
Rainy?
No, it's got a name.
Oh, that's
There's three of them that we learned, right? We learned about METARs,
Oh.
TAFs, and ATIS. Do you remember that?
Oh.
Okay. So I don't have access to the internet right now, but I did grab a METAR from earlier. So the METAR is for KSBP, right? And what's the next one is the time. So what's the 12 stand for? You see that on the gray part there?
Yeah, after KSBP.
Yeah.
122.
12, 20, 56. What does that stand for?
That's the zero time.
Yeah, and what's the first 1, 2 stands for?
That's the 12.
The 12th, which is today. And then 2056 Zulu. So can you write that down on your piece of paper? 2056 Zulu. And how do we convert that to what time is it here? Yes.
Our time into military time.
Right. So what's the first thing we need to do with 2056? Well, let's start it. You guys remember what time is it in New York City right now? They're 3 hours ahead of us, right?
Yeah, so.
And so we talked about what time it was in Greenwich, England. And it's daylight savings now, so we subtract 7 from that to get what the time is. Yes. These are weird pens, by the way.
Yeah.
If you push in the middle there, it makes it so when you come. Okay. So we subtract 7. There's more pens. So what time would it be then if we subtract 7 hours from 2056? 1356 would be what time in non-military time? 156, so about 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right? So I've got this METAR about 2 o'clock. And it has a long string of stuff there, but then it's also decoded, right? And so when it's decoded, that means the temperature is 16.7, which is 62. The dew point and relative humidity are fairly far apart, so we're not going to have fog right now. And then why do we need to know what the altimeter setting is? Yes.
So you're not at the wrong altitude, and there's another, and you think you're at like 20,000 feet when you're really at like 4,000 feet.
It's a little closer than that. You want to make sure that you don't think you're at 800 feet when you're really at 200 feet, because there's a mountain there at 200 feet. Yeah, so that's why you want to make sure that you set the altimeter in your plane correctly. And then the winds are from the south, 180 degrees at 15 knots. That's pretty strong wind, and it's gusting to 23. So, does anybody remember what the runways are here?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
2911
Okay.
are the biggest one.
Okay, so which runway do you think we would use if the wind is 180? How would we figure that out?
Is it compass thing?
Well, yeah, we can actually just, remember we did the compass with the east, north, south, and west?
Yeah.
Why don't you draw that on a piece of paper
Okay,
there?
good.
So just draw north is top, just like a little, so yeah, well, east is what degrees? Now, east is 90, okay, and so south is 180, west is 270, and north is 360. So now, if our runway is 11 and 29, so one of the runways goes to 29. Can you draw the 29 on there? Where would that be? Something like that, right? So can you draw a line something like that? All the way down this way. Well, this is 27, and this is 180. So halfway between that is about 245, right? So 290 is like right here, right? So you might have done that wrong, Dee. 29 is bigger than 27, right? So let's have this way. Okay, so if the wind is coming on your little chart there, the wind is almost straight up and down, right? So which runway would we be using today? Well, that commercial guys can't use that, and so the big guys, what do they be using today? What would be the crosswind on runway 11 then? Yeah. What's the difference between 11 and 18? Are you following, or is that too complicated? Good. You got it? And so the wind would be like fairly strong. It's 70 degrees off of your right. Am I right? Right wing? Yeah. Yes. 70 degrees is almost the same as 90. So like 90 is like directly across from you. So that's almost 100% crosswind. And if you're in a little plane, 15 knots is pretty much about the most you can do in most little planes. And gusting to 23. So somebody like me and Sarah, we're not going out there today. It's like, no, thank you. Not a good idea. I mean, we could maybe get up, but getting back onto the runway with the wind blowing us almost directly off of it might be really challenging. And then when it says broken clouds at 7,500 feet, what does that mean? Yeah.
Clouds that are like super like thick and
Yeah, 7,500 feet is pretty high. So most of the time when I fly, I don't usually go 7,500 feet. Like over the weekend, I flew over to Nukuyama, and I don't like bumps, so I flew over at 5,500 feet and flew back at 6,500 feet. So that would be fine for me. The clouds aren't an issue for me because I wouldn't be going through them. because it very rarely do I go that high. So I don't have a problem with clouds, but what would keep me on the ground today is that wind is pretty bad, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, so now we kind of know what the wind and the weather is like. So now let's see if we can listen to the ATIS and see what the ATIS says. Let me bring it over there.
Planning runway 11. On this contact, you have Oscar. San Luis Airport information, Oscar 2256, Zulu weather.
Let's see what we can write it down.
0 at 14, goes 26, visibility 10. Sea clouds at 3,500, 4,300 scattered, ceiling 5,000 overcast, temperature 16, 2.11, altimeter 29 or 87. ILS approaching you, landing runway 11. On this contact, you have Oscar.
Okay, so we have Oscar. And write down the time. It's going to say that after San Luis Obispo.
San Luis Airport information, Oscar 2256, Zulu weather.
2256
0
Zulu.
at 14, goes 26, visibility 10. Sea clouds at 3,500, 4,300 scattered, ceiling 5,000 overcast, temperature 16, 2.11, altimeter 29 or 87. ILS approaching you, landing runway 11. On this contact, you have Oscar.
Okay, so you can see how you need to practice listening to the ATIS and writing it down because he goes really fast. And that's one of the things, knowing what he's going to be saying kind of helps. You can, I'm an hour behind on this one, but the wind hasn't changed that much. It's still gusting. And we guessed correctly about what runway they're using. Right, where the runway is using the ILS 11. So we got that one correct. Now, if we were going to get in our plane, how would we know what frequency to dial up to get the ATIS? Yes.
Look it up.
Where would we look it up?
iPad.
What if we didn't have ForeFlight? All we had was a paper map in our hands.
You'd find your airport and.
Yes. So can you two guys find the San Luis Obispo Airport?
120.6.
Yes, 120.6. Can you guys find that for me on the map there? Okay, we're near the ocean. So I'm thinking we're right there. Is that us?
Yep.
And you see underneath us there, actually I can't see from right this direction. There, somewhere there, it has a bunch of information about San Luis Obispo. Do you see it?
Yeah, no.
Okay, can you read to me what it says about San Luis Obispo? Do I need light for you? You're okay.
This is 120.6.
And what's the tower frequency?
124.0.
Yes. And what is our longest runway? That's after the L. You see like a star and an L?
Yeah.
And then what does it say after that?
Says 611.
Yeah, 6'1", so that they drop off the zeros, so it's 6,100 feet long. And so if we remember that a mile is how many feet? 280. So it's a little bit long, like a mile and a quarter. And some of these jets need all that runway whenever it's wet like this, because they don't stop as quick. And then at the end of our runways, we have like, it's sort of like a, I don't know, like a blocks that break easily. So if they should happen to run off the runway, they'll slow down and stop. You ever see on YouTube where they have the trucks have if their brakes aren't working on a hill, they go up into the sand? So it's sort of like that. So it doesn't hurt the airplane too much, but the airplane doesn't end up running off into the streets and hurting people. So we have those at the end in case they can't stop.
That's a good idea.
Yes. And can we look on there and see what the elevation is for San Luis Obispo?
212 feet above sea level.
Yeah, and that's the elevation of the runway at 29. That's where it starts, yeah. Okay, so now let's take our map and see if we can find Lompoc. And Daisy, jump in there with them and see if you can find Lompoc. Okay, now take your, I think this is, these are called plotters. I have no idea why. I guess because you plot stuff on the map with them. So take your plotter and draw a line from the middle of San Luis Obispo Airport to Lompoc. Now, Benjamin, can you tell me what is the information we need to know before we go to Lompoc?
Their ATIS.
ATIS is good, right? What is the ATIS there?
It's not the.
It's AWAS.
Yeah, they don't use it.
And why don't they use ATIS there?
Smaller airport.
What color is that airport on there?
Purple. So
And actually they call that magenta,
Oh, yeah.
but
that.
if it's a magenta colored
it's not.
airport, it does not have a tower on it. The only way you can get ATIS is with a tower. Okay. And then if we wanted to, do we need to talk to anybody when we get down there?
Santa Barbara Road.
Well, if we were going to land there, who would we talk to? Is there somebody to talk to down there? Can we see on the chart? Is there any numbers for who to talk to? Okay, David, could you slide over and see if you can see as well? Why don't you open the map? Actually, let me turn the light on so it's a little brighter. Okay, have you found somebody?
They don't have a tower.
122.7. Yes, that's called the Common Traffic Advisory Policy, right? CTAC, yes. Okay. Now, suppose we wanted to keep going, and we wanted to go, and I'll give you a hint here, from Lompoc to KIZA. What's the name of KIZA? It's on that, yeah, you don't have to turn the map over, it's in the same one there. Have you guys found it? Anybody find it?
What was the code again?
So here's a hint.
Oh, found
We
it.
found Lompoc right there, right? And then the next, this is Santa Barbara right here. So somewhere between Lompoc and Santa Barbara is IZA. Did you find it?
Yeah. Same as?
Santa Ynez is the name of the airport. Daisy, what frequency do we talk to other people who are in the pattern there? What? 122.8, yes. And you guys don't need to know this right now because you're not up in the air, but the little airports all use 122.7, 8, and 9. And then occasionally you get like a bigger airport, like even though they don't have a tower at Paso, they actually are a little bigger because their class Echo, remember, goes all the way to the ground there. And so they actually have a different frequency up in Paso. And the difference between the ATIS and the AWAS is just that it's a 1 minute weather if you've got AWAS. So you get it every minute as opposed to every hour whenever they do the ATIS. Because they're in the tower there, if there's like a big change in the wind, they'll change the ATIS at whatever time it takes to make sure it changes. And then whenever you come in, they oftentimes tell you what the wind is whenever you're on final, so you know, okay, the wind is being squirrely today, and so they'll tell you what it is. So what airspace do we start out when we leave San Luis Obispo? What's the name? Actually, let me start earlier than that. Finn, can you tell me the different, there's 5 different airspaces that we had talked about. Did you happen to know what they are? I don't think you were here when we did that. Do you happen to know what they are?
There's like class C, B, E, and is there A?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Daisy, do you remember what Class A airspace is?
Isn't that like, I forget, it's like the highest.
Yeah, that's where the big jets fly. And if you guys go onto FlightAware, you'll see a whole bunch of jets at 35, 36,000 feet flying up in Class A. And yeah, and then below that is E. And so E is basically everywhere all the way to the ground. Well, I'm sorry, all the way to about 1,200 feet, and sometimes 700 feet. And then below that is Class G. And when you have airports, they are B, C, and D. And then occasionally an airport will be an E, like in Paso. Paso is a Class E airport. So we know that we only have B, C, D, and E. So we have 4 choices to pick from for San Luis Obispo. What class is San Luis Obispo in? Benjamin. And it's in Class D. Correct. And part of the way you can tell Class D is that it's got a circle going around the airport about 5 miles. So anytime you see an airport with a circle going around it that's blue, you know it's a Class D airport. And if we look, can we find Paso on this map? Is it on this side? Yeah. What's the difference between Paso and San Luis Obispo?
Paso is the tower.
No, in terms of the map itself. What colors, do we notice any differences?
Purple,
Yeah, it's purple.
Yeah.
so the 5 mile radius.
Yeah, and it goes around in 5 miles as well. And then how about if we look down here, can we see Vandenberg? It's just off of Lompoc. What does Vandenberg look like compared to the other airports on there?
It is one long runway. It had like crisscross.
Well, we're talking about airspace right now. Though. What airspace is Vandenberg? It's a delta, right? So they have a tower,
Yeah.
and like most places, most deltas, they're only open part-time, and in fact, they aren't even open on the weekends. Oftentimes, they're closed on the weekends. And actually, yeah, it does show you. If you flip that over, you can see on the map there. Up there, it tells you about airports. and it will show you the runways. And Vandenberg has pretty long runways. What's the longest runway? Can you, one of you guys see? Tell me what the longest runway at Vandenberg is.
15,000.
15,000. Why do you think they need one that's 15,000 long? Yes, guys.
Because the planes landed there with a lot of stuff.
And it was the backup place for the space shuttle.
Back up for the space shuttle. Yes. The space shuttle needs a lot of room. And can you tell me anything else, anything interesting that's around Vandenberg there? Do you see any interesting symbols around Vandenberg Airport?
It's a Class G airspace, 45-mile radius.
No, but do you see any symbol that you don't usually see if you're just like at any normal airport? How about, can you tell me, you see any weird symbols over there? You're Colby, right? Yeah. There's a rocket.
They look like weird axes.
Yeah.
They look like tomahawks.
The axis was there.
That's mine.
Ah.
I don't know, that's one of the obscure ones. Can you guys flip over and see, do you see mines on the legend anywhere? That's one of those obscure ones that probably doesn't show up.
Yeah, it's not there.
But there's a book that has all those in it, and I think I sent you guys a link to that. You can get it as a PDF and browse through it sometimes.
Yeah, it's very satisfying to grab through. Oh, so that's what that means.
Yes. Okay, so now we've drawn a line from San Luis to Lompoc, and then from Lompoc to Santa Ynez, right?
Yep.
Okay, so one of the things you can do with your plotter is if you look on here, it will tell you nautical miles. Okay? Does this one have it on there too, I believe? Let's see. It's Jefferson, so it should. Yeah, this one here is only in nautical miles. So how many nautical miles is it from San Luis to Lompoc?
From San Luis to Lompoc?
Yeah.
Hold on. I remember that. Yep, 75. 75. Does that make sense?
Oh shoot, we were doing it wrong. 35. We're using
This side.
That's fine. You can use that side.
We got 75.
Well, but because it didn't start at 0, it starts at 80. So that's measuring from the center. So do it again put that at the center of the airport and see how far you get.
That's what I did. I thought I did that. Oh wait, no.
Put this one on the center at
Yep.
35.
Okay.
You guys get 35 too? Okay. Now, if you're going to go to Lompoc, what direction would you be going?
Southeast a little bit.
Yeah, southeast. And again, the maps are true north.
Yeah.
But when we fly by magnetic. Does anybody remember how you find what the magnetic deviation is by using the map?
The color.
We're looking for the isogonic line.
Oh,
And they're easier to find in the ocean.
Yeah.
So there's a line that's a dashed line, like that one right there, for example.
Yeah.
You see that there's a dashed line with like a 13 next to it?
Yes. The one with the
Actually, the thing about isogonic lines, remember, is the magnetic North Pole is going walkabout and it's going over to Siberia. And so yours is, what does yours say? 13?
13.
Yeah.
Yeah, 13, 13.
And what does yours say? Yours looks like it says 12.3. And what, did you see the isogonic line on yours? What, it goes like this direction, like this.
So
It's
it's 13E.
13? Yeah, so these maps are all different ages, and so it changes. And whenever we fly, we do what's called the hemispheric rule, where if we're flying east, we fly at an odd altitude plus 500 feet, and if we fly west, we fly at an even altitude plus 500 feet. And that way, you know, if two people are coming like this, they're going to be 1,000 feet different from each other. So it cuts down on the chances of hitting people. Although the most accidents in aviation occur on a bright sunny Saturday afternoon about 5 miles from the pattern, because that's where all the airplanes are. You don't rarely hear anybody hitting somebody else when they're way out in the middle of nowhere, but it happens occasionally. Okay, I don't remember if we ever decided what airport class San Luis Obispo is. I don't think we did we?
It's Delta.
It's a Delta.
That's a KSBP.
Okay, oh, we did decide that, yes. So, we take off from there, and let's say we go 10 miles away from San Luis Obispo. What class airspace are we in 10 miles away from San Luis Obispo? So you need to use your plotter. And we're going down to Lompoc.
Class G.
Well, what altitude? Let's say we're going to be at 25. Let's say 2,500 feet. What altitude would we be in?
Class Echo. But that doesn't seem right.
Yeah, we're in Class Echo, right?
Yeah.
And there's the shaded area is Class Echo, but also anytime you're above 1,200 feet, you're going to be in Class Echo unless you're in an airport space. Okay. Now let's suppose we keep going, and we keep going down there, and we hit Santa Maria, and we're at 2,500 feet. We were going to Delta, so can we just fly through there and say, no, we don't need to talk to anybody, we just keep going?
No, you have to call.
So we would be talking to Santa Maria, what frequency would we call to get to Santa Maria? Can you guys look on the map and see what frequency?
22.95.
Is it?
Oh, 22.95.
That's the ATIS or that's the tower?
That's Tower.
Okay. Is it the tower?
I don't think so.
Some people disagree with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought it was 118.3, but I could be mistaken.
So we use CPAP.
That's also the CTAP. So when the tower is closed, that's the CTAP. 118.3 is the tower. The other one I think might have been the ATIS, right?
No, 22.
That one has nothing before.
118.3 is the tower. 12115 is the ATIS. Yeah. And what's the top of the airspace in Santa Maria? No, it should look on it's on the chart. It tells you what the top of the delta is on the chart there. No, I mean literally right on the chart. Right on the chart.
Yeah.
Do you guys see it? You see any numbers like maybe like a 27 anywhere on there?
Oh yeah, I see it.
You see, so what is 27? It's not 27 feet. 2,700 feet. Yes. So if we are flying at 2,500 feet, we have to talk to Santa Maria. What if we were flying at 3,500 feet? Would we have to talk to Santa Maria? No, because we would be above their airspace, right? Yeah. Now, if we were flying right down there, though, what's the direction of the runway at Santa Maria? The biggest runway is that one right there, right? It actually happens to be 30. So if people are taking off on Santa Maria and we're flying at 3,500 feet, right where they're taking off, that's probably not a good idea. So what I would do if I'm flying down to Lompoc is I would talk to Santa Barbara approach when I left San Luis Obispo, because then they would be able to help me stay away from people that I'm coming near, especially whenever I'm like right where they're taking off from Santa Maria. Okay? So let's keep going down from Santa Maria. Let's go, how far is it from Santa Maria to Lompoc? How far? 15? Everybody figure 15?
Yeah, 14 to 15, something like
Okay,
that.
that works for me.
It's a matter.
Okay. And then do we fly through any other airspaces on the way over there?
Yes. Oceano. Oh wait, sorry, no, Vandenberg. Not even a little different way.
We probably miss Vandenberg.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, no.
But probably not, right? We're probably fine. Now, let's go back to our route. Our original route was from San Luis Obispo to Lompoc. Okay, is there any other airspace that we need to really be worried about if we're going that flight from San Luis? We're down a beam, Santa Maria. Now, what do we have to worry about? Is there any airspace that we need to worry about while we're flying down that way? We're flying from San Luis Obispo to Lompoc.
Yes. Oceano.
Well, there's no airspace. You don't want to listen in to Oceano. But if we're flying almost directly over the top of it at 3,500 feet now, they may be landing and taking off, but we don't really have to worry about that. So what about when we get down near Vandenberg? Is there any airspace we need other than the class Delta and Vandenberg? Is there any other airspace that we need to worry about? What are those blue hashed lines mean? Yes. Do we fly through any restricted airspace? No, but I mean on our flight plan, does our flight plan take us through restricted airspace? Yeah. So that means we need to talk to somebody if we're going to fly through that, right? And in general, they're not going to let you fly through it if they're doing stuff. But if they're not doing anything, it's what they call it's cold, meaning that we can fly through no problem. If it's hot, you can't fly through it. That means they're doing stuff that they don't want you around. And Daisy, do you remember what a MOA is? It's a military operations area. And can we fly through those? And do we have to talk to anybody when we fly through them? We don't have to, but again, it's free. You might as well talk to them because they're flying jets that are going 600 miles an hour. You don't want to be in the way of them. It would be a very bad day for both of you. Just the weight, turbulence from them flying by you would make you very unhappy. So you want to be talking to a controller, and they will let you decide, they'll tell you to go left or right, or just go straight through, whatever they want you to do. Yeah. Okay, so now we've gone to Lompoc, okay, and we're going to go to Santa Ynez. Is there any kind of weird stuff on the chart there that we might want to look at?
Just a parachute drop area.
Yeah, there's a parachute drop area. So that's another reason that we want to listen to ATC, because they will say, you know, attention all aircraft in the vicinity of Lompoc Airport. There will be a parachute jump starting in 5 minutes at 15,000 feet. And so then you just want to be real careful because, again, that will ruin your day as well as the parachute jumper's day if you get in their way. And so you just want to make, you know, stay away, and they'll tell you where they are. And if you have any questions about, you know, how far away am I, you just ask them. It works out well. Okay, and what about that gray shaded hatched area there? What is that?
Where? Oh, that, like the diamond kind of shit.
That's a military route. And that means that there's high-speed aircraft going through there, and it tells you what the altitudes are at different places. So they're flying between 3,000 and 6,000 AGL. That means above the ground. Okay. So now we're just watching out for them. There's not really anything you can do. You know, you don't have to, you know, ask for permission. But again, it's always a good idea to be talking to ATC, because if there are airplanes really fast, really low to the ground, they will tell you about them. So now, when we get to Santa Ynez, what's interesting things on the charts around Santa Ynez?
There's gliders
Yep.
and an R. Additional. R, is R like a military thing?
No, R just means it's a private airport that they don't really know anything about. And I think that's because the gliders land next to the runway there. So that's just basically telling you where the gliders land.
Okay.
And who would we talk to say, hey, we would like to come in and land, and we want to make sure there's nobody else around, and we want to, if there is somebody there, we'll talk to them so we know what they're doing and they know what we're doing.
12218.
And is that the tower?
No, see that.
How come we know that?
Because there's a C right after the frequency.
Yep. And what other reason do we know that?
Because it's a purple airport.
Yep. And how long is the airport there? The runway?
It is
2,000.
Yeah. That's not very long. So we want to make sure before we go there that our airplane, not landing so much, you can always land in a shorter distance than you can take off in, but you want to make sure that you can take off in 2,800 feet if you go down to Santa Ynez, because it's shorter than what you're used to around here. Right? And how wide, actually it doesn't say how wide it is on there, but it's not particularly wide. Now when I flew over to the valley the other day to New Koyama, where is that on the map? Do you see any over in the valley there? Found it. And how long a runway does it have?
2,000
Yeah, 2,203.
Yep. So that's, actually, it's 3,300, isn't it? Or,
It say that, it says.
oh,
It says
yeah, the chart is apparently a little bit out of date. It's actually 3,300 feet wide. So you have an old chart there. They just redid that. It's really nice, but it's a little. It seems like it's narrower than it is. So you sometimes can fool yourself when you get there. Okay. So anything else interesting on the charts along here? You see anything, like any lakes or anything?
Yeah, they can ask me in.
Okay, how many lakes did you see on the way down here?
Little pet or no?
That's for emergency only.
No.
Yeah.
That looks
Yep, there's a,
And they
Got
two,
Cussy. Yeah.
Kachuma?
Kachuma.
Yeah.
Tuma.
Yep. Okay, so that, before GPS, that would be sort of like what you would kind of use to figure out where you were, right? You go, oh, okay, I'm gonna fly, and if I go and find a lake, I'm too far. But if I'm up in the air and I see the lake over there, then I know, oh, that's about where I should be, right? And up here, this, if you're coming into Santa Maria or San Luis from over in the valley, this, the white area there, that's Twitchell Reservoir. And it's colored white because it doesn't always have water in it. And when it does have water in it, then it's green, but oftentimes, or it's blue, but it's oftentimes green because it's just, there's nothing there. There's no water. But this year it's pretty full. Okay, do we see anything else interesting along the way?
A refinery.
Yeah?
There's a vortex.
And then how about anything near Oceana that looks interesting?
Guadalupe.
The Guadalupe Dunes are there? Yep, there's parachuting.
I didn't know those.
There's not anymore. The guy that ran it, he goes down to Lompoc now. In fact, he's also an airplane mechanic, and it's really hard to get him to work on your airplane because he would rather jump out of airplanes than work on airplanes. So he gets paid $150 an hour to jump out of airplanes.
Oh my god, that's
So that would be an interesting career choice for somebody.
wow.
So if we keep going from Santa Ynez, what's the nearest airport to Santa Ynez to the south?
South, those, SBA.
Yes, yeah, southeast, but
And what airport is that?
SBA
Santa Barbara. Okay. What class of airport is that? And we can tell that it's a Class Charlie airport because it's got around the airport there's magenta rings, but the airport itself is blue. So that's a Class Charlie. Okay. And if we're going to fly over top of that and not have to be in their airspace, what altitude would we fly if we're going down this way still to LA? What altitude would we fly at in order to stay out of their airspace? Well, if we're flying VFR, you guys remember what VFR is?
visual flight rules.
Yes. And so VFR, we fly east at odd plus 500 and west at even plus 500. So if we're flying from Santa Ynez to Santa Barbara, what direction would that be? Colby, what direction is Santa Ynez to Santa Barbara?
Southeast.
Okay, so if the rule is, if we're going east, we fly at odd, plus 500 or minus 500, what would be a good altitude to stay out of Santa Barbara airspace? Can we see what is the top of Santa Barbara's airspace there? Do we see any numbers that would give us a hint? Daisy, do you see any numbers that give us a hint as to what the top of their airspace is? Well, we see in the inner ring, we see a 40 over SVC. What do you think 40 over SVC means? Anybody? 4,000, because we always add 2 zeros to any of the numbers on the chart, so 4,000 feet to the surface. So the inner ring is 4,000 feet to the surface. And then do we see any other on here? There's a 4,000 over 1,500. So what do you think that means? In the outer ring, the maximum of their airspace is 4,000 feet, and it goes down to 1,500 feet. Right? And then below 1,500 feet, it's Class Echo. So if we were going to fly over top of Santa Barbara, going that way, what altitude would we pick? Would we pick 4,500 feet? Is that the altitude? Is that an odd altitude plus 500? No, that would be an even altitude, right? So we would have to go up another 1,000 feet. So we would go over at 5,500 feet. And then we're not in their airspace. Okay? Now, if on the way back from LA, and we want to fly over top of it, what altitude would we fly at? Even number plus 500. So what would be the lowest even number we could pick? Well, we have to stay out of their airspace. Their airspace goes up to 4,000 feet. So 4,500. So,
Did we talk about the blue numbers? Did we talk about those?
no, we haven't talked about those. That's a good idea. We should talk about all those blue numbers on the chart. What do they mean? You see all those blue, there's like a big blue number and a little blue number next to them?
Oh, the big one?
Yeah. And there's a little one. What do you think they mean?
Degrees?
Nope. Those are actually altitudes as well. And if you notice on your chart, each of the little sections where the latitude and longitudes are there, there's a number in every single one of those squares. And what that tells you is the highest altitude in that square. So if you were flying over top of Vandenberg, anywhere in that square around Vandenberg, if you were at 2,500 feet or above, you wouldn't hit anything. If you were at 2,500 feet below, you might hit something depending on where you were in that area. And then over in the hills, notice there's a 5 with the 3. That's 5,300 feet that you would be able to, if you're above that, so that would be sort of like an emergency. If you, all of a sudden you were in clouds and you didn't mean to be, if you just climbed to 5,300 feet, you won't be hitting anything. Even though you can't see anything, you won't hit anything. Okay? So, for your exercises, take some maps, any maps, and make a plot on it.
Flight plan?
And a flight plan. Okay, I want to go from this airport to that airport. Who do I talk to? What are the frequencies at the airport? Who do I listen to? And then, yeah. And then, what I think you should do first is look on your map and on a chart, and then go on to Flight Plan Go and see how close you got. And one thing we didn't talk about is the difference between magnetic and true north. So when you do stuff on here, the angles are like true north, but when you actually fly it, you fly magnetic, because you don't know what true north is in your airplane. Your airplane only knows magnetic. Okay. And then also, if you guys can go on to Flight Radar or just call up the ATIS and practice listening to the ATIS. So you can, because it takes a lot of practice to be able to listen to it and get it right. Okay, so we're out of time today. I think next week we're going to do checklists and flight manuals, so we can learn about the different airspeeds. So like what airspeed are you in the pattern, what's your stall speed, what's VY, VX, all those kind of good things. That'll help you land your
I've
simulator.
seen VY and VX a lot in this book I have, and I love it.
And it helps to know what your stall speed is whenever you go into land, because when you land, you want to stall like this far off the ground. And so you can't stall that far off the ground unless you know what the stall speed is for your airplane. And it's usually somewhere in the 55, 60 range, depending on your airplane. Although if you're flying your A336, it's going to be about 170.
Yeah. So, what's the stall speed on the A10?
Okay. And so we can, the rain might have stopped, so we may be able to get out there without getting all wet.
All right.